Ranking Member Portman, you're recognized for your questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all the experts who are here today. Let me just start with something simple. We know from data that we've been able to uncover that 70% of the medical protective gear that we needed in the United States was based in China. And in February 2020, China nationalized medical supply production and imposed export controls, of course, on many of those critical supplies because they wanted them for their own citizens. So the first question is just for all four of you, a quick yes or no. Do you think we were too dependent on China, yes or no?
Yes.
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 Okay, that's good. That's a good start. And, you know, it was 70%, but also it was not a reliable supply, obviously, given the fact they put the export controls in place and making it even worse, despite a lot of competition from around the world. So that dependence impeded our COVID-19 response, right? No question about it. And the question is, you know, what do we do about it? One of the things that we've talked about today and we're trying to figure out is how to make more PPP here, but use market forces to do it. So make it make sense. And we have manufacturers here in this country who are willing to make stuff, but they need to know that they've got a market. And if they don't, they can't make the significant investments, millions of dollars, to be able to convert their plants. And this has particularly been tough on the textile industry. And Ms. Glass, I want to thank you for being here, but also for your hard work and support of this Make PPP in America Act, which you mentioned we introduced and was passed in the committee just last week. In 1991, 56% of all clothes purchased in the United States were made in the United States. By 2012, it was 2.5%. So we have a big reduction in our textile manufacturing here. Has the general trend toward offshoring of apparel and textile products that we've seen over the last generation contributed to this specific lack of manufacturing of PPE during the pandemic?
There is undoubtedly, Senator Portman, absolutely 100%.
And this goal, as you know, of the PPE in America Act is to require agencies to actually issue longer-term contracts. Why are long-term contracts an effective way to use those market forces to incentivize production here in the United States?
Because, Senator, it provides a critical demand signal for our industry that there will be a purchaser and that they can invest in the new equipment necessary. We have Ohio manufacturers like Standard Textile who have looked at trying to invest more here in the United States, but they won't without a strong demand signal. And a strong demand signal are long-term contracts. And other countries like Canada are issuing long-term contracts to their manufacturers to bolster production. Some of their contracts are as big and as large as 10 years because they know these are essential production chains.
As you know, I've had a great frustration with our Department of Defense in this area, and in particular their refusal to issue those long-term contracts, which I never understood. At the height of the pandemic, they still weren't willing to do it. But can you talk a little about the Department of Defense role here and what they could do better?
So throughout the pandemic, there were several different purchasers across the federal government, including FEMA, Department of Defense, HHS, and a lot of these contracts were structured for 90 days, 120 days. And while our industry responded overwhelmingly to those solicitations, that's not enough production time to invest in new equipment here in the United States and make a long-term commitment that you're going to make something here. And we found so many fits and starts with the Department of Defense purchasing, not just in terms of the contract period, but the vetting process associated with this and the kinds of products, that there were conflicting demand signals that went to our industry. In fact, I'm just going to leave you this one anecdote. Our industry ran for a very short-term contract, I think it was 120 days, millions of yards of fabric for gowns, for reusable gowns that are sitting in warehouses that was never used because the government decided at the last minute that they wanted to purchase disposable gowns.
Yeah.
And that was because there was a lack of coordination across the government. DOD was purchasing for HHS, and the specifications and requirements weren't.
Well, those are all things that can be fixed. And as you know, I'm also not sure that disposable gowns make sense. I mean, why not have a gown that's reusable? So much a better deal for taxpayers, particularly that they tend to be better gowns and safer in terms of the use by hospitals in particular. With regard to drugs, I just learned from you, Dr. Schoen-Delmeyer, that 80% of finished drugs are made elsewhere. 90% of the components, you said, are made elsewhere, which was actually a higher figure than I had thought. I understand that labor costs are cheaper in places like China, and that China also intervenes in its economy in a non-market way to help their businesses. Are these the primary reasons that China is so dominant in the manufacturing of active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs?
Sir, I think those are among the primary reasons, but it's large and multiple factorial. I think China as a government has set the intention in certain therapeutic categories to become the dominant producer and influence those markets in ways that affect trade policy, in ways that allow them to dominate economically. I'd point out, in just during this pandemic, of the active pharmaceutical ingredients made in China that are shipped to India to make products for the U.S. market, we've seen price increases of 100%, 200% or more. China threatened to limit shipment of some products to India and the U.S. market, although they haven't acted on the threat. India itself did limit some exports of certain drugs for a period of time to the U.S. So there are a number of factors, and those certainly are part of the process.
Any reason the United States can't figure out a way to produce API here?
We have some, and actually there's a new wave of what we call green manufacturing, people that use more efficient processes, cleaner processes that actually can reduce the cost compared to what it's costing in China, given the old technology and the old processes. So we could turn this around, but we have to have a concerted, developed national policy within the U.S. And to my knowledge, there's no agency that sets broad, industry-wide policy for the pharmaceutical market. FDA approves drugs and safety and effectiveness, but they have no authority to look at economic and market-based factors. In fact, they're told not to.
That should be a priority, I would think. We learn from this. I have a lot of questions on the Strategic National Stockpile, and we don't have time to get all the answers. I don't want to go over my time because we've got a lot of colleagues want to talk. But Dr. Enahall and Dr. Hanfield, if you could supply us with some more information on what the Strategic National Stockpile ought to be. Clearly, the 50-state pandemic was not something they prepared for, right? You made that clear today. So that should be one criteria, is to be prepared for this possibility. But we're going to submit some additional questions to the record for you all, and I would appreciate your getting back to us so that we can, again, try to put together some legislation that actually helps to move us forward and be better prepared next time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.